My name's Kaylyn. I'm a dog trainer and the owner of Kay9 Mentor LLC. And this is Brody. I wanted to just take a few minutes to introduce myself so that clients can understand my background and where I'm coming from and what kind of trainer you're getting when you hire me versus another trainer. And for people that might want to be getting into dog training, it's a very unregulated industry and there's not that much information out there about how to become certified, how to start your own business, what are the benefits of being certified. So I just wanted to kind of share from my perspective how I came to be in the position I'm in my journey. I grew up in the woods and farm towns of Western Massachusetts, and I grew up very connected with nature. I lived in the woods. I was always outside barefoot, running around. And that's definitely something that I've carried with me into my adult life. There's a lot of dogs that are living very confined, artificial lives, just like we are. I think it's so important for us all to connect back to nature. And I promise you that you'll see a difference in your life and relationship with your dog if you get into nature a little bit more. My family mostly had little dogs growing up, and these dogs were very much untrained. I was like a dog freak, so I would teach the dogs like tricks and fun stuff as a kid, but my family's philosophy around dogs was definitely a lot different than my philosophy about dogs now. Growing up, I always wanted so many pets. I was constantly asking my mom for guinea pigs and snakes and lizards and birds, and she gave into a couple of those, but in general, it was like, when you're older, you can have all the pets you want. So here I am now. My first real job when I turned 15 was working at a pretty high volume doggy daycare and boarding facility, which was attached to a vet's office. So I got a lot of experience working and handling with tons and tons of different dogs, and also got some vet med experience kind of sprinkled in there, which sparks my interest for later. Looking back now at this doggy daycare facility, I wouldn't recommend it for most dogs. It's very, very high arousal, very noisy all the time. It was small play groups, which was great. I think big dog play groups was a maximum of 4 dogs, which was awesome. But they were in very, very tiny yards, like smaller than this deck I'm sitting on right now. There was lots of fights all the time. We were untrained in dog body language. We really didn't have any kind of formal training. And like I said, I was like 15 or 16 coming into this situation, running play groups, handling dogs, breaking up fights. And it was very stressful for me and for the dogs. I stayed at this doggy daycare job all through high school, and then I went off to college where I earned my environmental science bachelor's degree. My hopes and dreams with my degree was to become a wildlife biologist. I really, really love animals. Like, I can't stress enough, I always have been such an animal freak. And I had dreams of being a wildlife biologist, running a wildlife rehab facility. And I did a crazy internship where I went down to Alabama for a long summer and was catching mostly snapping turtles, doing a biodiversity survey. So I was literally out there, like in the swamps, in my waders, catching snapping turtles. It was insane. Thinking back to that now, I think that probably helped with my aggressive dog and feral cat handling. I still love wildlife. I'm very environmentally conscious. I love being in the woods. I love gardening, but I always came back to wanting to work with dogs. And every time I went home from college for like Christmas vacation or for summers, I always went back to working with dogs. I finished my college degree in 3.5 years. So I finished like a semester early, and I was just so ready to be done with school and like start real life. I really, really wanted a dog, and I could not have a dog in the on-campus townhouse that I was living in. So as I finished my final semester of college, I was emailing, sending applications in to different rescues and different shelters so that when I was moved out of college, I could get a dog. I ended up seeing Brody on a rescues page, and he was about 4 or 5 months old at the time. He was so darn cute. I sent an application in for Brody, and because of my history working at the doggy daycare and my plans to return to the doggy daycare when I finished school, the foster really thought he would be a great fit for me. The foster knew that Brody was a super, super handful of a puppy. He was rescued as a feral in Georgia with the rest of his litter, but no mother, unfortunately. He had been returned 3 times already, and he ended up in Massachusetts out on Cape Cod with this foster. On the last day of my final exams of my last semester in college. I already had my room packed up. My car was filled to the brim. I was ready to go. I had said goodbye to all of my roommates. I went to campus and took my last final exam, left the classroom, got in my car, and I drove straight out to Cape Cod to go meet Brody. And I ended up bringing him home that day. Brody was an insane puppy. When I first met him at the foster's house, I met the foster, we chatted without any dogs present, and then he let Brody up from his like kennel space in the basement. Brody came up, immediately peed on the couch, ripped up a pillow, bit the foster's arm, drawing blood, was like a Tasmanian devil. And of course, I was like, yep, I'll take them. And that really changed the course of my life. If I had gotten a nice, sweet, little easygoing baby dog, I probably wouldn't have become a dog trainer. With Brody, I had to learn as much as possible, as fast as possible, and I had to become a dog trainer in order to keep this dog. So I adopted Brody. I was done with school. I went back to working at the kennel and doggy daycare while I kind of decided what I wanted to do with my life. And during this time, of course, I was bringing my puppy to work with me at doggy daycare. And if I could go back, I would absolutely have done things so much differently, because I was taking a dog who was already very over aroused, had a lot of trouble settling, like had some behavioral issues already at that young age. And then I was bringing him to this environment that was like Disney World, high arousal. There was so many strange dogs he was interacting with. He was overwhelmed a lot of the time, and I didn't know any better at the time, but now looking back, I wish I could have done things differently. And now that I know and I've made these mistakes, I can help owners not make the same mistakes. So after going back to the kennel for a little bit, I became interested in being a vet tech, and I moved towns. So I moved farther away from the kennel and very close to a veterinarian's office, where I got hired as a vet tech, and I worked as a vet tech for about a year. This veterinarian's office I was working at as a vet tech did a lot of work with the local shelter. So we were doing a lot of like trap, neuter, release with feral cats, taking in a lot of animal control dogs that were being fostered at the facility. So I got a lot of experience handling, again, like so many different animals in different ways than I was used to. As a vet tech, you're doing a lot of like phlebotomy and nail trims and ultrasounds and x-rays. So you have to be super hands-on with dogs. You're often making them do things that are uncomfortable, that might be painful, that they really don't want to do. And of course, I was noticing so many dogs were fearful, becoming aggressive, and just overall like having a lot of handling issues. And I was seeing that I could help them. There were things that I could do that made the experience easier for them. There was tips that I could give the owners at home so that the next time their animal came in, they had a less stressful visit. And that made me really more interested in working with more dogs. After I had been a vet tech for about a year, COVID came through in full force and shutdown or lockdown happened. It was around this time I was really getting burnt out as a vet tech. The emotional toll of being a vet tech and dealing with things like euthanizing animals or owners who want to help their sick animals but they don't have the money for treatment is very, very emotionally draining. All my vet tech friends out there, I respect you guys so much. I give you all the props in the world because that is a very, very difficult job, and vet techs are underappreciated and underpaid. So by this point, I really had an interest in dog behavior. Brody was probably about a year and a half old at this point, which is like, if you guys know, if you have an adolescent dog, the teenage months are so much harder than the baby puppy months. So I was really in the thick of it with Brody. And I started interning with a local trainer and certified canine behavior consultant who was absolutely amazing and took a lot of like aggression and behavioral problem cases. Shout out to Elise and PBC. I 100% recommend them to anybody in Western Mass who needs training. They're absolutely fantastic. I started first interning with Elise. She had a program to help people become trainers that included hands-on hours, shadowing her classes, and one-on-one consultations and private lessons, helping with board and trains and foster to adopts. And it was a lot of cleaning. So if you guys are interested in becoming a dog trainer, know that you kind of have to work your way up and you have to earn your place. It's going to be a lot of literally cleaning up poop to start with. Like I said, I was totally burnt out with my vet tech job, and I ended up just like begging Elise for a job, and she didn't have a position to fill, but she so kindly hired me and kind of created a position for me. This facility also was a boarding and daycare facility, but in such a different way than the first daycare I had worked at. This new facility that I was now working at also did boarding and daycare, but in a much different way. So this new facility was very much like behavior and training first, and also focused a lot on training staff, which was totally brand new to me and such a game changer. And I really started to understand like what happy, fulfilled dogs could look like. This facility was also on a farm, which was like almost 20 acres, all fenced in for the dogs. So they had so much more space to exist and roam and interact organically. And the combination of that plus very customized play groups. We didn't take random dogs. We really knew all the dogs really well. All dogs had a behavior plan. Staff was really well trained, and we like hardly ever had a dog fight. Go figure, you can prevent dog fights. Doggy daycares don't need to have dog fights every day. This facility also had sheep that the border collies could work. We put a dock diving in pool while I was working there and started doing dock diving and swim lessons. We had a big, huge training room in this awesome old barn where we could do agility and conformation classes and big group classes. It's really, truly an amazing place. As I worked my way up at this facility, I became a trainer officially, and I was doing group classes, consultations, private lessons, board and trains, and day training. In the spring of 2022, I became certified through the Council of Professional Dog Trainers. In order to receive this certification, you have to take a test. So you have to really have a good understanding of the theory behind training, learning theory, animal behavior, which I did through some of my classes in college. I took some animal behavior classes in college, and then this internship at PBC was really focused on a lot of reading, learning about different methods of training, watching lots of different videos, meeting different trainers, submitting assignments, doing case studies. So I felt very well prepared to take the test, which is kind of hard. It's a weird test where there's like lots of trick questions and weird wording and things like that. You also have to have a certain amount of hands-on hours to receive your certification, which was super easy for me because I was working and training dogs every day. For anybody who wants to become a dog trainer, I very highly recommend finding a mentor and doing some kind of shadowing or internship under a very experienced trainer or certified behavior consultant so that you can get a lot of hands-on experience with many different dogs under the guidance of a professional who really knows what they're doing. I also absolutely recommend volunteering at shelters and just getting your hands on as many dogs as possible. Go to the shelter and walk dogs. After becoming certified, I worked my way up to a managing role at the facility. I think my title was training manager or director of training, and I ended up kind of training other trainers. So I had other folks that I supervised, and I would supervise them with their board and trains or their day trainings. So we were learning not only like the hands-on aspect, like how to train dogs, but also how do you communicate with clients, and doing a lot of background work too, lots of conferences, lots of reading, just making sure that we had as much knowledge and expertise as possible. I really loved my time at that facility at PBC so much. And again, I recommend them to anybody in Western Massachusetts. Big shout out to Elise, Connor, Sam, and everybody else at PBC. You guys really changed my life and guided me in the right direction. In 2023, I was really ready for a big change. I had gotten out of a relationship at the end of 2022 that was very much time for me to get out of, and I was just kind of sick of living in Western Massachusetts. I was ready for a change. I was sick of the cold winters. I still was around a lot of people that I went to high school with, and I just was ready for another change. So me and my now fiance Ben moved to Arkansas together. Ben had his dog Sadie, And Sadie had a lot of insecurity issues around other dogs. She had a history of some pretty serious violence against other dogs. So it was a process to get her and Brody acclimated to the point where they could like live together and be siblings. So that took a couple of months, but by the time we moved to Arkansas, they were totally trustworthy together. They can be out in the house alone together, and they really are best friends and siblings. They act like siblings. Just after moving to Arkansas, I started Kay9 Mentor LLC. I started my own business. And while I kind of built up my client base here and established myself here, I took a bartending job. That allowed me to feel really comfortable paying my bills without feeling like I was sacrificing my quality of work to try to like take on dog training clients that I didn't really jive with or didn't feel like it was the right situation. Being selective about my clients is something that is so important to me, and that is one of the benefits of running your own business is like you can just say no to whoever you need to say no to and really take on people that align with you and you know you can help succeed. And there are plenty of other dog trainers for anybody else that I say no to. I don't know if you can see his body shape right now, but it's an interesting one. Interesting shape. Another huge benefit to owning my own business is I can give as much attention to detail and care as I need to. So, working with a big facility where dogs can be boarded and there's kennel technicians who can do things like exercise and potty dogs while I just trained was super, super cool. But a lot of the attention to detail that I would give to dogs 24/7, like maybe somebody else doesn't have the same standards and there's not such consistency throughout the day. So this is a great way for me to make sure that the dogs really are getting the best care. And I know that because I'm giving it to them. With Kay9 Mentor now, I offer in-person and virtual consultations and private lessons, as well as some VIP day training and board and trains for existing clients who have already completed a consultation. My training philosophy has changed a little bit over time, which I think is totally normal. I think every dog trainer or any professional in any field can say that. And I would say that I have moved away from such strict obedience. When I started out training, we did a lot of foundational work before any like high level stuff, which is awesome. It's super necessary. But the foundational work that we were doing really focused on like commands: sit, stay, wait, down, come. All of those things are super, super, super great. But I think that now my perspective has shifted a little bit to where it's great that your dog knows commands, but do you want to have to be commanding your dog all the time for them to exist appropriately in the house? I know I don't, and I was. So with a dog like Brody, who was a lot to handle, I had him in commands like all the time because if he wasn't in command, he was probably going to make a bad choice. And now I know, like, of course, there's so much value in commands, but I've shifted to teaching the dog how to exist when they're outside of command more. Something like this, even just a few years ago, would have been so difficult for Brody, and I would have been having to remind him to stay and to quiet because he would be like looking at me, whining, waiting for the next thing. And that's because I created a monster. I created a dog that needed to be told what to do all the time and who couldn't just settle and exist next to me. So I think that most owners are kind of on this side of the fence where like they don't want to have to tell their dog what to do all the time. It's just not really fun to have to micromanage your dog. It's not fun for you or your dog. So my approach now is much more holistic, relationship based, teaching communication systems, and I actually do a lot less of teaching specific commands and specific obedience nowadays. There's definitely a time and place for them though. I consider my training approach now welfare first. So whenever I meet a new dog and a new client, our intake process and our consultations are super, super extensive. So if your dog is reactive or anxious, I'm always looking at welfare first. Like what's biologically going on with the dog? Are they healthy? Are they getting enough exercise? Are their nutritional needs being met? And only then can we move on to like our communication with our dogs, our relationship with our dogs, and our skills training. Brody is a great example of a dog who had a lot of handling issues that I spent years trying to work through before I learned that he had back pain that had gone unnoticed by all of his vets, even though I was bringing up these issues. And when I addressed the underlying back pain, that solved a lot of our handling issues that I was like trying so hard to train out of him when really it was a welfare issue. So I don't want you as an owner to get stuck in this like loop of trying to solve a problem through training and through obedience when it's a welfare issue. I'm always looking at welfare first and kind of going up our hierarchy of behavior change. My goal for all of the owners I work with is for you to be a kind and fair leader to your dog. That means you have a great relationship with them, you know how to communicate with them, you to them, and understanding your dog's communication back to you as well. You know how to fulfill your dog, and your dog can live harmoniously and appropriately in the house with you. I would love to connect with you. So if you're on a dog training journey, leave a comment and let us know where you're at. Could you hear the sniffs? If you would like to connect with me for a virtual or in person here in Northwest Arkansas consultation, I'll also link that in the caption below. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for joining me.